Hey guys, tonight we're stepping softly through torchlit corridors into a world of echoing footsteps and freezing stone walls. Imagine this. It's pitch dark outside. Your bed is nothing but a sack stuffed with straw, and someone's ringing the chapel bell like it owes them money. You haven't even opened your eyes, and already someone's yelling your name. You're a servant in a medieval castle. And no, you're not the clever cook or the slightly flirtatious stable boy in some whimsical movie. You're the one nobody remembers, the one who wakes up before the sun just to carry things for people who don't remember your name. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this day, but let's see how far you can make it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes barely adjust to the dimness before you swing your legs onto the icy floor. There's no candle. The only light filters in through the arrow slits and glimmers off damp walls. The rushes on the floor rustle under your bare feet. Someone in the bunk above you groans, then coughs. The bell is still ringing. You don't even have time to yawn. Your first task is already waiting. Mainstream historical truth. Castle servants were often divided between day staff and night staff, with overlapping responsibilities. Many lower servants rose before dawn, around 4 to 5 a.m., to tend fires, prepare food, or begin cleaning before nobles awoke. You grab your tunic from the wall peg. It's scratchy, probably wool if you're lucky, more likely something patched together from the discards of someone wealthier. No shoes yet. That comes later, after you finish your first rounds. You stumble down the narrow servants' stairwell. The smell hits you first. Ashes, old stew, something vaguely animal. It's not awful, just familiar. You pass the chapel. The bell still tolls, calling the castle to spiritual awareness. You'd settle for physical warmth. Your first task is rekindling the kitchen hearth. The embers from last night glow faintly, like sleepy eyes. You add sticks, blow gently. It's harder than it looks. Your fingers are stiff, and someone's used the good kindling for the main hall. You whisper a prayer under your breath, not to God, but to the fire itself. Please, just catch. Quirky historical tidbit. Many castles didn't keep fires burning through the night to save fuel. Servants had to restart fires from embers every single morning. Some carried glowing coals wrapped in moss or dung to help light others. As the flames finally leap up, you set to work. Fill a bucket, wipe the long table, stack kindling. All before the head cook arrives, because if she walks in and something's out of place, that bread paddle isn't just for baking, you know. The castle is waking. Slowly, the grooms are moving about the stables. You hear the soft snort of horses being fed. Somewhere, a page is singing off-key while cleaning chamber pots. You aren't allowed to speak yet. There's an unspoken rule in the early hours. Silence means diligence. You like the quiet, honestly. Before the nobles start barking orders and everyone pretends not to hate each other. Historians still argue whether castle servants enjoyed tight communal bonds or lived in quiet rivalry. Records suggest both. Competition for favor was fierce, but lifelong friendships were also forged in those dimly lit corridors. You clean out a few basins, sweep around the cooking hearth, and fetch the day's first water from the well. The handle sticks, as always. You twist and heave and curse silently as the rope groans. One full bucket, then another. Your muscles ache already. But this is just the beginning. You'll need to be back upstairs in less than an hour. The lady's chamber needs warming. The tapestries must be shaken. The rushes changed. And if you're caught with dirt under your nails, that's your fault, not the wells. But for now, you breathe. Just once. The castle is cold, but the fire's burning, and so are you. You carry the bucket like it's filled with gold, even though it's just cold, slightly green water from the courtyard well. And every step echoes, because the stone beneath your feet doesn't care how early it is, doesn't care that you're trying not to wake the lady's greyhound, doesn't care that your back already feels like it's lost a duel with a wagon wheel. The castle's bones are colder than the morning air. Everything here holds a chill. The walls sweat, the windows more holes than glass, let in the damp fog like uninvited ghosts. Your breath fogs out in front of you. You half expect it to shatter and fall. There's no such thing as warm unless you earn it. You make it to the lady's solar and set down the water. Then it's time for embers again. You kneel, coaxing the tiny pile of ash into life, using breath you can't afford to waste. A puff, a spark, a bit of straw from your pocket. Saved just for this. The flame catches. You smile, just barely. Mainstream historical truth. Medieval castles were notoriously cold. Most were built for defense, not comfort. Even noble quarters had limited heating, often a single hearth, and the thick stone retained moisture and cold year-round. The room flickers to life. But you don't get to stand still and enjoy it. There are bed linens to shake out, quietly, without disturbing the lady. You pull the curtains gently. A bit of dust dances in the air like ash. One wrong sneeze and she'll scold you for startling her complexion, whatever that means. Outside, the corridor starts to hum. Someone's hauling firewood. Someone else is muttering about broken shutters. You glance out a narrow slit in the wall and see the mist beginning to lift from the hills. The world is waking up. Your break is already over. You head toward the main hall. Your next job, clearing out last night's ashes and relaying the fire. Again, because the Lord insists on entering a warm hall, even though he won't appear for hours. You dig into the hearth, the metal poker vibrating in your hand. The ash is thick, black, still faintly warm. You bag it in a leather bucket and carry it out to the midden heap. Your feet slip a little on the damp stone steps, but you don't drop it. You learned that lesson last winter. You still remember the sting of cold soup poured down your tunic by accident from a grinning kitchen boy. Quirky historical tidbit. Ash from castle hearths wasn't always discarded. Some was used to make lye soap, scrub wooden floors, or even control odor in the garderobes. But mostly, it was just another heavy thing for someone like you to haul. Once the hearth is clear, you lay fresh kindling. The logs are damp. They always are. You arrange them anyway, like a child trying to impress a parent who never claps. Then you polish the brass fireguard. No one ever says thank you, but they notice if you forget. You notice your fingers are stiff. You can't feel your toes. You flex both, discreetly. No time to complain. And now the floor. The main hall's rushes, those scattered herbs and reeds people seem to think are carpets, are foul, half-rotted, smelling of mold and meat and spilled ale. You rake them out with a long forked stick, coughing as a cloud of something unspeakable lifts into the air. Quirky historical tidbit. Rushes on castle floors were changed only a few times a year in some places, though more frequently in wealthier households. They were often layered with aromatic herbs like lavender or rosemary to mask the smell of rot, droppings, and worse. You dump the soiled rushes outside. You sneeze twice. Then you start laying down fresh ones, trying not to gag as your hands brush something suspicious from under a bench. The hall is starting to glow. Firelight licks at the tapestries. Smoke curls up into the rafters where owls still sleep. You hear a noble's footsteps, slow, confident, soft-souled. You kneel, then back away without being seen. You still haven't eaten, but your next job is already calling. Because the day doesn't wait for you, and neither does the castle. You hear it before you see it. The clatter of pewter cups, the scraping of trenchers, the sudden clink of a spoon dropped in surprise. The nobles are eating, and you're not. You scurry past the high table, eyes low, pretending you're too busy to care. But your stomach twists like a rope. The smell is everywhere. Fresh bread, fatty pork, roasted onions, even a whiff of something sweet like boiled apples and cinnamon. It's not fair, but it's also not new. Mainstream historical truth. In most medieval households, servants did not eat with the nobility. Lower servants waited to eat until after the lords and ladies were finished, often surviving on leftovers, if there were any. You pass the kitchen doorway and glance in just long enough to see a platter of cheese being arranged like art. Someone snaps their fingers at you, more kindling now, and you bolt down the corridor without protest. When you return, breathless, the steward is scowling. Not because you were slow, but because he saw you look. You offer a soft, "Yes, sir," and vanish. You finally find your way to the scullery. That's where they keep the servant scraps. You pick through a chunk of blackened crust and half a beet that someone bit but didn't finish. A few others are doing the same. No talking, just chewing fast so they don't get caught lingering. You eat while standing. No one sits. There aren't enough stools, and you wouldn't dare use one meant for the cook. And then, before your second swallow, a bell rings again. Your break, if you can call it that, is over. Quirky historical tidbit. Some wealthier castles employed a pantler or butler specifically to manage food distribution, even for the servants. But even in these cases, lower servants had little say in what or when they got to eat. You hurry toward the yard. A cart has arrived. It's filled with flour, fish, and, by the smell, something that used to be cheese. You join the chain of bodies unloading it, one bag at a time, hands stinging from the rough sacks. The merchant doesn't speak to you. He speaks only to the steward, who nods without smiling. Someone near you whispers that a goose is missing from the count. You pretend you didn't hear. You always pretend. Historians still argue whether servants sometimes stole food from the kitchens. Some believe pilfering was common and quietly tolerated. Others insist that even the smallest theft could be severely punished. You believe both. You return inside just in time to see a spilled goblet soaking into the nobleman's tablecloth. A footboy scrambles to blot it with the edge of his tunic. His hands shake. The noble laughs. "He's as useful as a wet dog," the man says, flicking a crumb at the boy's ear. You freeze, because that could have been you, and still might be. You resume your duties, cleaning goblets, resetting trenchers, carrying a pail of wine so heavy it sloshes against your tunic. You smell like a tavern. No time to change. You find yourself cleaning the lady's chair before she returns. There's a bit of oil from her lapdog's fur, and she'll notice. She always notices. You scrub with a bit of vinegar and cloth, making sure the seat shines, even though you know she'll never say thank you. Quirky historical tidbit. Some nobles were particular to the point of obsession about furniture cleanliness, especially those who believed dirt attracted illness or bad humors. Servants often cleaned chairs, tables, and even wall panels daily. The meal ends. You clear it all in silence. The nobles retire to the solar, or the gardens, or their chambers. Wherever it is, it's somewhere you're not allowed to follow. Unless, of course, someone calls for you, and then you'd better run. You sigh, just once. A deep one from your ribs. But even that feels too loud. Your next task is waiting in the hallway. Scrub the windowsills, chase out the flies, wipe the flagstones. Again. Always again. You pass a tray of untouched honey cakes, and for a moment, your eyes linger. You don't reach out. You've learned your lesson. In this castle, you eat last. You eat quietly. And sometimes you don't eat at all. Your hands are already sore by the time you reach the hall again, this time dragging a lumpy burlap sack filled with fresh rushes and dried herbs. The old ones have turned soggy from last night's spilled ale, and there's something dead lodged near the bench leg. Mouse, probably. Maybe not. You don't ask. You just reach for the tongs. Mainstream historical truth. Floors in medieval castles weren't bare stone or covered with rugs. Instead, they were layered with rushes, a type of marsh grass, herbs, and straw to provide warmth, absorb messes, and somewhat suppress odor. These layers were changed regularly in high-status households, but only seasonally or rarely in lower ones. You sweep the soiled rushes into a pile, the reeds crackling and breaking beneath your broom like dry bones. Dust clouds puff into the air, thick with hair, crumbs, and who knows what else. You hold your breath, but the stench still wraps around your nose like a damp glove. There's no mask, no gloves, no magical medieval Febreze. Just you. Just your broom. And the smell of 3 days' worth of feasts and feet. The fresh rushes feel better, drier, sharper, laced with thyme and rosemary. The herbs crack underfoot with a faint hiss. You scatter them across the floor like you're sowing seeds, but nothing good will grow here. Quirky historical tidbit. Some castles added lavender, pennyroyal, or even mint to their rushes, not just to smell pleasant, but to deter pests like fleas, lice, and rats. The effectiveness of this was limited. You hear footsteps behind you. Fast, impatient ones. You step back just in time to avoid a young page sprinting through the hall, nearly upending your pile of clean herbs. You don't shout. You just exhale through your nose, then go back to work. You finish one half of the hall before the steward appears. He glances down. "You've missed a spot," he says, pointing to a single wilted dandelion head you somehow left behind. He doesn't bend to pick it up. He doesn't even wait to see if you do. You do, of course. Then you make your way to the side corridor, where the dogs sleep. Their straw is worse than the rushes. There's something sticky on one corner, and one of the hounds growls if you get too close to its blanket. You hum to yourself, very softly, just to stay focused. Historians still argue how often rushes were replaced, especially in poorer or less frequented parts of castles. Some records mention daily changes in guest rooms, while others note the same rushes being left for entire seasons. Either way, servants were the ones dealing with the mess. You wish the nobles could smell what you smell, but they won't, because they never do. You grab the final bundle and return to the hall just in time to see the cook crossing with a tray of sweets, probably for the steward or the reeve. The plate wobbles, and for a second, you brace for a disaster, but no. She steadies it. Still, your heart skips. Because if something did fall, you'd be the one sent to clean it. Not the cook, not the steward. You. It's always you. Quirky historical tidbit. Some castles had official strewers, servants whose sole job was to prepare the rushes and herb floors before guests arrived. In more modest settings, it simply fell to the youngest or lowest-ranking servant available. As you toss the last handful of minty straw across the threshold, you realize you're sweating. Not because it's hot, it's not, but because bending and lifting and rushing wears you down, even in the cold. You lean against the stone wall just for a moment. The coolness seeps into your back. You close your eyes. Just for a moment. Then someone coughs nearby, and you're moving again, as if you never stopped. Because in this castle, if you're not seen working, you're seen slacking, and that can be worse. You've barely finished smoothing out the last of the rushes when you hear it, the faint slosh and scrape of the chamber pot parade. Someone's already left one outside a noble's door, half-lidded and full to the brim, wobbling like a trap set for the next unlucky foot. And guess what? You're the next unlucky foot. Mainstream historical truth. Servants were responsible for emptying chamber pots, especially for high-ranking lords and ladies. This task was often handled by the lowest-ranking members of the household, pages, maids, or scullions, and it had to be done discreetly and efficiently. You pick up the first pot with both hands, trying not to think about its temperature, weight, or color. You've learned not to breathe through your nose or your mouth. Ideally, you just stop breathing until it's done. Down the stairs you go, carefully, because one slip and you'll baptize yourself in someone else's breakfast, and no one will help you. They might not even stop laughing long enough to let you change your tunic. The pot sloshes, and you wince. You pass another servant on the landing, both of you clutching matching buckets like you're in some miserable relay race. Neither of you speaks. There's nothing to say. Outside, past the kitchen, behind the herb garden, lies the dumping pit. You approach it with the reverence of a priest. You pour slowly, carefully, with one leg back just in case. The smell is impressive. A bouquet of medieval digestion, sharp enough to make your eyes water. Quirky historical tidbit. In some castles, waste was dumped into moats or cesspits. Larger households had designated gong farmers or nightmen who worked overnight to remove waste from latrines and pits, an essential, if horrifying, job. Back inside, you carry the empty pot to the wash basin. You scrub with hot water, vinegar, and something resembling soap. You've done it so many times the motions are muscle memory. Then you do it again, and again, and again. 8 pots in total. Not all nobles aim well. You wonder if some do it on purpose. You don't dare ask. Historians still argue whether nobles were embarrassed by their bodily needs or viewed chamber pots with casual indifference. In either case, the task of cleaning them was invisible and thankless, trusted only to the most silent, most replaceable hands. You reach the 3rd floor. A lady's maid waves you into the chamber. "Quickly," she says, not unkindly, before the dogs come sniffing. You nod. The chamber is warm. Tapestried walls, velvet cushions, a fire that smells like pine. The pot is next to a chair carved with grapes and birds. You try not to look at it directly. You lift, you bow, you leave. Outside, you wipe your hands on your apron and try not to feel them shaking. Quirky historical tidbit. In wealthier castles, chamber pots were made of fine ceramic or even silver, but they still held the same contents and the same indignity for whoever had to clean them. Your last stop is the Lord's room. You hesitate. His pot is heavy, full, and there's a stain on the side. You don't ask, you just lift. The hall is crowded now, nobles walking to and from the chapel, a young knight fiddling with his belt, someone laughing. You walk past them all, clutching the pot like a cursed relic, trying to disappear into the wall. You make it outside again. The air hits you like a slap, but it's over, for now. You sit on a low stone step and close your eyes. For 3 seconds, that's all you get. Because now it's time for laundry, and your hands aren't nearly raw enough yet. The sky is finally brightening into a pale, half-hearted blue as you carry the bundle of linens toward the washing yard. You'd think sunlight would feel cheerful by now, but all it does is show you exactly how stained these sheets really are. The laundry tubs are already steaming. A fire crackles beneath the big copper cauldron, heating water that's never quite hot enough to make the job easy, but just enough to scald your hands if you're careless. You're careful. Mainstream historical truth. Washing clothes and linens was one of the most labor-intensive tasks in medieval life. It often took place outdoors or in designated washhouses and involved soaking, boiling, scrubbing, and beating fabrics with lye soap or even ashes. You dump the bundle near the tub. Some of it's damp, some of it's worse. There's a particular gown stained in 2 places that you're fairly certain belonged to the lady who never sweats. You roll up your sleeves, dip your hands in, and start scrubbing. The soap smells like something between tallow and onions. You work it into the cloth with your knuckles, then beat the fabric against a worn wooden board. Slap, twist, dunk, repeat. You'd think it's rhythmic. It isn't. It's bone shaking. Your knuckles start to turn red, then pale, then number. You keep going. Quirky historical tidbit. Medieval soap was often homemade, created from lye, which could be made by boiling wood ash, mixed with animal fat. It was harsh on skin and had an almost chemical sting, like scrubbing with a mixture of bacon grease and floor cleaner. The senior washerwoman shouts at a younger girl who's using cold water. "It won't lift wine, child," she snaps. You glance at your own fabric. It's the Lord's undershirt. It smells complicated. You pretend not to notice. Halfway through the pile, you pause to wring out a woolen tunic. It's heavier than a baby ox and nearly pulls your arms out of their sockets. You grit your teeth and twist until the water stops dripping. Then you carry it, dripping and miserable, to the drying lines behind the herb garden. It's not just the cold, it's the wind. The wind has teeth. It bites your fingers as you pin up each garment with small wooden pegs. Some blow off before you finish. You chase them across the muddy yard like a dog chasing scraps. You hear someone laughing. You don't look. Historians still argue how often noble clothing was washed versus simply perfumed or brushed clean. Some garments, especially finer ones, were rarely washed, both to protect the fabric and because laundry was so physically taxing. You return to the tub. You scrub again. The water is brown now. You change it, haul fresh water from the well. Your arms feel like they're filling with wet sand, but you keep going because there's no stopping. If you stop, someone else gets your place. If someone else gets your place, you might get moved to something worse. You know it can get worse. You've done latrine duty. You've done grave shoveling. You've cleaned the spit rack after boar feasts. You'll take laundry. For now. Quirky historical tidbit. Some castles reused laundry water for multiple loads, meaning the last items were cleaned in what amounted to hot stew. Because water was precious, and time was even more so. Finally, the last shirt is hung. Your fingers are wrinkled, cracked, raw. You wipe them on your apron and wince. But you're not done. Now comes folding, and stacking, and delivering. You gather the driest items, roll them into a bundle, and carry them back through the stone corridors. You knock softly at the chamber door. A lady's maid opens it and snatches the pile from your arms without a glance. She closes the door before you can ask for the cloth pin she borrowed yesterday. You sigh, quietly. The last pile is for the steward. His things must be folded precisely. You do it by the kitchen hearth, where it's warm, and your hands can thaw for a moment. The warmth makes you dizzy. You blink, and then it's over. Linens stacked, apron damp, back aching. But there's no time to sit. The steward passes by and raises an eyebrow. "Candles next," he says. Not a question, not a suggestion, just your next mountain to climb. You bow your head, because this is the rhythm of your day. Scrub, lift, haul, repeat. And you haven't even reached the midday bell yet. You're starting to move like your joints are made of rope, loose in places they shouldn't be, tight in others. As you make your way through the castle's quieter corridors, the shadows are finally beginning to shorten. Midday sun presses through the high slits in the wall like lazy fingers. Not that it helps much. You're headed somewhere even colder. The armory hallway, where most of the sconces are still dead. Because now, it's time to light the castle. Mainstream historical truth. In most medieval castles, lighting was minimal. Fireplaces and candles were expensive and labor-intensive, so servants were responsible for lighting, trimming, and replacing them in prioritized areas. Great halls, noble chambers, and chapels came first. You carry your lighting tray, a flint, a steel, a small taper wrapped in linen, and 2 bundles of tightly wound rushlights. Slim, waxed reeds soaked in animal fat. They're greasy, smelly, and your only real friends this afternoon. The first sconce is high, too high. You lug a 3-legged stool across the corridor, plant it like a battle flag, and clamber up. The metal is cold. Your fingers still haven't healed from the laundry scrub. And now? Now you're dealing with flame. Your first strike produces nothing but sparks. The second, a tiny thread of smoke. You blow gently, cheeks puffed, eyes squinting. The taper catches, then sputters, then steadies. You smile. For 3 seconds. Then the wax drips on your thumb, and you remember why you hate this job. Quirky historical tidbit. Medieval lighting was so poor that some servants were assigned solely to manage flame, relighting torches, trimming wicks, or even shadowing nobles at night with portable lanterns. A dropped candle could mean disaster. Fires were frequent and devastating. You light the first sconce. It flares to life with a soft hiss. The hallway changes instantly, no longer a gloomy tunnel but a corridor with shape, depth, texture. Dust motes swirl in the glow like lazy insects. You step down, move the stool, and start again. The next torch is trickier. The wick is too short and you can't reach it. You grumble, then fetch a longer taper from the kit. The extra time earns you a scolding glance from the under-butler, who suddenly decided this hallway is his priority. You bow slightly and bite the inside of your cheek, and continue. The smell of burning tallow clings to your sleeves. You wave smoke from your face, and step over a rat that doesn't even bother to flinch. By the time you reach the chapel corridor, your taper is half gone, your shoulders are sagging, and your mind is already halfway to supper. Just kidding. There's no supper for you yet. You climb again, this time to light the candles mounted near the Virgin's statue. The air is cooler here. Still, you strike the flint with reverence. The candle flares up, and for a moment, the carved face seems to smile. You smile back. Historians still argue how frequently candles were replaced and how much they cost households over time. Some castles were frugal to the point of darkness, while others burned hundreds per day. It depended on wealth, status, and how badly the Lord disliked squinting. You light the next few more easily now. Your hand finds the rhythm. The wax barely stings anymore. You move through the castle like a ghost with fire in your fingers. Until you reach the main hall, you forgot about the chandeliers. They're high, suspended by ropes, too high for your stool, and too complex for a quick fix. You sigh, lower the candelabra with a creaky pulley, and begin the tedious process of replacing melted stubs with new candles from the steward's carefully tallied box. He counts them, every single one. You get 10. You'd need 15 to do this right. So you space them out, smile at your own cleverness, and pray no one notices. Quirky historical tidbit: candle theft was a surprisingly common offense among medieval servants. Wax was valuable, and even spent stubs could be sold or remelted. Some households branded their candles with unique shapes to catch thieves. You relight the chandelier, hoist it back into place, and step away just in time to see the first nobleman enter the hall. He says nothing, which means you've done well, for now. You return your kit to the storage shelf near the scullery. Your hands smell like charred beef fat. There's soot under your nails. Your apron is dotted with holes. You feel like you've survived a very quiet battle. And guess what? The day isn't over. Not even close. The castle clock, really just a giant hourglass someone flips near the steward's desk, tells you it's early afternoon, or as you think of it, the time when things start to fray. Because by now, the nobles are restless. They've eaten, gossiped, maybe hunted a bit or played at falconry. But now they want distraction, which means you're on entertainment duty, sort of. Mainstream historical truth. In larger castles, afternoons were often filled with leisure for the upper class: music, poetry, games, embroidery, falconry, or hunting. Servants played essential behind-the-scenes roles in setting up these activities and keeping everything flowing smoothly. You start in the great hall, where cushions are being fluffed, tapestries straightened, and someone's warming a harp string over a candle. You're sent to fetch a stool. No, not that stool. The one with the embroidered seat, and place it precisely near the hearth for a visiting lady. The harpist arrives. You pretend not to flinch when he sneers at your positioning. Too close to the heat. It'll warp the strings. You move it. No thanks. You duck out again. In the hallway, someone shoves a basket at you. Cards and dice for the gaming table. You carry them as carefully as if they're holy relics. They're not, but if anyone loses a carved bone die, it'll be your name called first. Inside the solar, the ladies are beginning their needlework circle. Someone has dropped a spool. You retrieve it before anyone needs to look. You refill wine goblets. You adjust a cushion. You clear a dead wasp from the windowsill. All without being asked. That's how you survive. Quirky historical tidbit. In some households, servants were trained to anticipate needs silently, learning to read gestures, tone, and glances, especially when nobles considered direct speech beneath them. You're sent next to the courtyard. A group of young squires are play-fighting with blunted swords, practicing their stances while a knight barks corrections. You carry a water bucket and a rag to mop the sweat from wooden hilts. Someone swings too wide and hits you. It's not hard, but it stings. He apologizes, then laughs. His friend joins in. You nod and keep wiping. You've been hit harder for less. You follow them back inside and help collect their armor pieces for cleaning. The hallway echoes with the clink of metal. You carry a dented pauldron in both hands like it might bite. It's not your job to polish it, but it will be if someone forgets whose job it is. Historians still argue how many servants were dedicated to these in-between tasks, too important to ignore, but too small to merit a title. Some records suggest large households maintained dozens of nameless helpers whose only job was to fill the gaps. That's you, a gap filler, a ghost with calluses. Someone calls for more firewood. You deliver it. Another needs a sewing needle. You're off again. Then it's broom duty near the chapel, where ashes from morning prayers are still being tracked across the flagstones. You clean, nod, smile, never too widely, and move on. You pass a minstrel tuning his lute. He waves you away with his pinky. You backpedal, then realize he's still using the towel you brought earlier to dab his forehead. He's sweating like a roast duck. Quirky historical tidbit. Castle entertainment wasn't always grand. Often, it was informal. A lute player, a jest, a dog doing tricks. The grandeur was in the setting, not the act. Servants were tasked with making it all appear effortless. As the afternoon wears down, you return to the great hall. The nobles are lounging now, bellies full of ale and stories. A couple are half asleep near the hearth. Someone's tossing scraps to a spoiled hound. The steward gives you a look. It means, disappear. So you do. You step into the side corridor, where the wind whistles through the arrow slits like a reminder. You're not meant to be seen during peace. Only when there's work, which means you'll be very visible again soon. Because peace never lasts. The sun is dropping now, bleeding sideways through the narrow windows, stretching long golden lines across the dusty stone. You've reached the part of the day where everything is tired. Servants, dogs, nobles, and even the castle itself. But that doesn't mean you get to stop. It just means you have to be quieter. Mainstream historical truth. As evening approached, medieval castles would begin a slow wind down, with formal meals served, fires restoked, and servants preparing bedrooms. Quiet efficiency was essential. Mistakes in this period could interrupt rest or provoke noble irritation. You're back in the kitchen, helping to prepare the evening meal, not by cooking, mind you. You're not trusted with fire or knives. Your job is to pluck feathers from a bird, a goose, specifically, which was probably still honking this morning. The cook slaps a basin down in front of you. And get the pin feathers, or it'll look like we served it with a beard. You nod, already tugging at the slick, warm skin. One feather at a time, each one resisting. The stink of wet poultry and blood clings to your fingernails. Your apron's already stained from earlier, and now it looks like a butcher's rag. No one compliments your precision. They never do. You finish, wipe your hands, and are immediately sent to the buttery. That's where the ale casks are kept. You're told to fetch a pitcher, but not the pewter one, the glazed ceramic with the painted band. The nobles notice the wrong pitcher. They always do. You carry it like it's full of fire. Quirky historical tidbit. In some households, noble guests judged hospitality based on minute details: pitcher material, trencher's width, how hot the bread was. Servants could be reprimanded for ungracious presentation, a phrase that really just meant, "You made me think about the help." You pass through the hall again, now buzzing with anticipation. Torches are freshly lit, rushes replaced, again, and the tables are being laid with care that borders on obsession. Forks aren't common here, but knives are polished to a gleam. Spoons are laid in precise alignment. You help arrange bread slices in a pattern that seems random, but apparently isn't. You don't question it. You just match the steward's movements. Historians still argue whether evening feasts in castles were always elaborate affairs, or often simple meals dressed up by setting and mood. Diaries from noble households hint at both, depending on who the guests were and how bored the lord felt. Tonight, the lord feels theatrical. That means more running for you. You fetch a wine jug from the cellar, 3 flights down and up again. You refill a candle near the dais that somehow sputtered out. You hold a tray of salt and must not spill even a grain. Salt is precious. Salt means status. Salt must arrive dry. You deliver it with hands that don't dare tremble. Then you vanish, because dinner begins. And no one wants to see you once the goblets start clinking. So you stand behind the panel near the hearth, hidden, still, ready. If someone drops a goblet, you replace it. If the dog eats something it shouldn't, you carry it out. If a noble decides their trencher isn't quite aligned with their seat, you fix it, silently and fast. Quirky historical tidbit: some servants in noble households were trained in invisible service, the art of being present but unnoticed. They stood in shadows, moved in rehearsed paths, and anticipated gestures before words. A nobleman spills wine. You appear, wipe, replace the goblet, step back. He doesn't look at you. Perfect. The musicians begin to play. It's soft, plucky, lute and pipe. One noble claps along half-heartedly. Another yawns. A third begins a story about some joust that happened 10 years ago. You've heard it 4 times. You yawn. Quietly. Into your shoulder. Then it's over. Just like that. The Lord stands. The feast is done. The guests shuffle toward their chambers, or the fire, or the gallery. You, meanwhile, return to the hall and begin again, clearing bread crusts, scraping trenchers, stacking knives, carrying goblets back to the wash basin. No one helps you. Even the dogs have gone to sleep. You scrub in silence, the music still faint in the rafters. Your hands are red again. Your knees ache from stooping. The goose bones rattle into a bucket. You set aside anything not chewed to the marrow. The cook might boil it for stock tomorrow. And then, finally, a breath. You lean on the wall, not sitting, just leaning. You're allowed that much. For now. You think, for a fleeting second, that your day might be winding down, that maybe, just maybe, the worst is behind you. And then the steward appears, lantern in hand, eyes sharp despite the hour. "They're ready for bed," he says, like it's the end of a sermon. Which means it's time to start the last great ritual of castle life: putting the nobles to sleep. Mainstream historical truth. In medieval castles, servants were responsible for preparing their lord's chambers for the night, lighting fires, warming bedding, laying out night clothes, and ensuring the room was secure and comfortable. Some even slept just outside the chamber, ready for any midnight request. You follow him up the narrow stairs, your legs heavy as millstones. One hand on the cold wall for balance, the other carrying a bundle of furs and linens. You pass a couple of guards posted outside the solar, one yawning, one sharpening a dull blade. Neither looks at you. First stop, the ladies' chamber. You knock softly. Inside, the fire is low, the tapestries heavy with the day's lingering heat. A maid is brushing the lady's hair, long, dark, impossibly clean. You place the folded shift on the foot of the bed. Then, you step aside to light the bedside candle, shielding the flame with your palm. Warmer stones, the lady says, barely glancing your way. You bow and disappear. Down to the hearth kitchen. You grab a linen-wrapped bundle of warmed rocks, fresh from the coals. Back up. Quick. You tuck them into the bed's foot wrap so she'll have warm toes. She doesn't thank you. Of course not. Quirky historical tidbit. Bed-warming stones or pans were common in noble homes, especially in colder climates. They were wrapped in cloth to avoid burns, but were still risky. There are recorded cases of bedding catching fire from unattended warming devices. You repeat this process 4 more times, each noble with their own requests. Some want extra blankets. Some want fewer. One demands you fluff the mattress, a straw-stuffed beast weighing nearly as much as you do, by lifting each corner in sequence. You missed one, he says, pointing at the corner you just lifted. You nod and do it again. You check shutters, douse torches, make sure the privy stool is empty. Then you quietly close the door behind you, already forgotten. Historians still argue whether noble sleeping arrangements were consistent across the classes. Some records suggest high-born lords often shared chambers with their attendants, while others point to more privacy in wealthy households. But in all cases, the servant's presence loomed nearby, silent, constant, half asleep with one ear open. You descend again, not to your own bed. That would be too easy. You still need to stoke the fireplaces, the ones that matter anyway. You carry a basket of dry kindling and peat bricks, the main hearth, the chapel, the steward's office. You kneel, blow, spark, and coax each one until it glows again. Your sleeves reek of smoke. You've stopped noticing. Quirky historical tidbit. Castle fireplaces were notoriously inefficient. Many rooms remained cold, and most of the heat went straight up the chimney. Still, the fire served symbolic comfort as much as actual warmth, and someone, always a servant, had to keep it going. Eventually, blessedly, you're dismissed. You climb to the attic corridor, where the air is thinner and the wind sighs through the roof beams. Your cot is against the far wall, one of 5 lined up like coffins. There's no mattress, just a sack stuffed with oat chaff and a thin wool blanket. But it's yours, and it's horizontal. You collapse for 30 seconds. Then someone coughs, and you remember. Bucket duty, a shared chamber pot for the upper corridor. It needs emptying before dawn, or it'll stink the whole wing. You groan. Out loud this time. No one hears. Historians still argue whether castle servants ever truly slept, or if they simply rested in intervals between tasks. Based on what you're living right now, it's safe to say, not really. You finish the bucket run, wash your hands with cold water from the cistern, and finally, crawl into your cot again. You pull the blanket up to your chin. You stare at the rafters. Your muscles twitch. Your feet throb. Your hands feel like they've been scrubbed with gravel. And yet, you smile because you survived. One more day. The thing about castle life is, the day never really ends. Not for you, anyway. Just a few hours after your eyes have finally closed, a hand jostles your shoulder. It's still dark. Maybe midnight, maybe earlier. The air is colder now, and your blanket feels suddenly precious. But the steward is at your side, whispering, "Up, the Lord is ill." Mainstream historical truth. Servants were often called at all hours for noble needs: illness, insomnia, unexpected guests. The idea of uninterrupted sleep simply didn't exist for the working class. If your master stirred, so did you. You throw off your blanket and slip on your apron with shaking fingers. Down the hallway, other cots are emptying too. Someone's lighting a rushlight. You follow its glow, eyes still heavy, legs stiff and slow. The Lord's chamber is dim. A single candle burns, its light flickering across heavy wooden beams and frowning tapestries. The air smells strange, sour, sharp, wrong. The kind of scent that tells you something inside the body has gone sideways. The chamberlain whispers, "Fetch water and cloth." You nod. Run. Quirky historical tidbit. Medieval medicine revolved around balancing the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If someone felt unwell, it was often believed one humor had overflowed, requiring remedies like bleeding, purging, or poultices made from herbs and animal parts. You bring a bowl of cool water, linen cloths, and a small bundle of herbs wrapped in muslin, peppermint and yarrow, meant to soothe nausea. The chamberlain takes the bundle without a word, then shoves it under the Lord's pillow. He groans, loudly, then rolls over and vomits. You flinch. Then you wipe. Of course you do. Historians still argue how often noble illness was met with genuine care versus superstition. Records show a bizarre mix of remedies, from honey poultices to prayers over spoiled eggs. One remedy for fever included placing a live frog in the patient's mouth. You're grateful it's not that kind of night. You help change the sheets. It's a messy, delicate dance, pulling fresh linen under a man who may wake at any moment and shout at you for tugging too hard. You move like a ghost. Breathe shallow. Once he's settled again, the steward nods. Leave the herbs. You're done. You bow, step backward, and leave the room without a sound. Outside, the corridor seems cavernous. Cold stone underfoot. Your hands are wet, your sleeves stained again. But the night has turned quiet. You half expect to return to bed, maybe even sleep for a few hours. But there's another voice now. The Reeves' wife is having pains, early labor. Someone needs to run for the midwife. Guess who that someone is? You don't even pause to argue. You just start running. Down the tower stairs, out past the gatehouse where a sleepy guard waves you through. Into the outer village, feet slapping mud, breath white and fast. The midwife lives in a thatched cottage with an herb garden that smells like vinegar and wild mint. She's already half-dressed, boots by the fire. You gasp out the message, and she nods once, grabbing her kit. You run back together. Quirky historical tidbit. Castle servants were also runners, delivering messages, fetching healers, retrieving goods from town. Some households even trained their faster boys for speed, using them like human postal pigeons. Back inside, the birth chamber is already warm. You're not allowed in, but you're told to boil water and bring fresh linens. So you do. You stoke the fire until it glows hot enough to burn your eyebrows. You scrub your hands with ashes and vinegar. You wait. You sit by the kitchen hearth, fighting sleep, watching the flames twist and blur. You drift, just a little, until a voice calls you again. More firewood, more water, more cloth. You bring it. Again and again. The baby is born just before dawn. You hear the cry, soft and raw, and for a moment, just a flicker, there's peace. The steward allows you a crust of bread, still warm. You eat it like it's a banquet. Then you're told to clean the chamber. Of course. You scrub the basin, wash the cloths, carry the soiled linens down to the yard and rinse them in a tub that smells like iron and steam. Your hands are pink from the cold, but it's morning now. The sky has turned the color of thin milk. Birds sing. You smile, just a little, and go back upstairs. Because breakfast isn't going to serve itself. The morning sun is pale and apologetic, as if it knows it's late to the party. You're already at the great hall, laying out the breakfast trenchers. Your fingers move automatically, placing bread slices in the right pattern, refilling salt dishes, checking that the knives are polished, not with actual polish, but with the corner of your tunic because, well, time is short and your hands are already shaking. Mainstream historical truth. Breakfast in a medieval castle was lighter than modern expectations, often bread, ale, and sometimes cheese or cold meat. Still, the presentation mattered. For guests and lords alike, even simple meals were staged with attention. The bread is dense, sour, and heavy. You're tempted to steal a corner, just the crust, something to chew to keep you upright. But the steward is watching. He has eyes like a falcon when it comes to crumbs that go missing. So you don't risk it. Not today. You carry in the morning pitcher of ale, careful not to spill. The hall is mostly empty for now, just a few bleary-eyed nobles muttering to each other. One asks for a warm towel, another points at a dirty spoon with theatrical dismay. You retrieve replacements like a ghost in worn shoes. Back in the scullery, the air is thick with steam and clanking tin. The washer boy is still scrubbing last night's goblets. You join him with the new wave of trenchers, bowls, knives. The water's cold. The soap is gone. You use sand in your knuckles. Both are rough but effective. Quirky historical tidbit. Before soap was common, medieval servants used ashes, sand, and even urine to clean dishes. Ammonia helped break down grease, though the smell never quite faded. Breakfast concludes with little ceremony. Nobles file out toward the chapel or garden. You gather their dishes, scrape leftovers into a slop bucket for the pigs, and return to the kitchen for your own meal, if there's any. There is. Sort of. A crust of black bread, a smear of goose grease on the corner of a cutting board. You sit on the floor near the oven, legs outstretched, and eat slowly, savoring every chewy, burnt bite. For 5 minutes, you are warm, federal, still. Then the bell rings. You sigh. Mid-morning duties begin. You're sent to the herb garden to help gather mint and sage for the apothecary stores. The garden is peaceful, if a little overgrown. You welcome the sun on your face, the dirt under your nails. For a moment, it almost feels good. You pinch leaves, one by one, lay them gently in the basket. You hum quietly. No one hears. Historians still argue how involved lower servants were in medicine gathering, but many accounts suggest castle workers had a hand in everything from growing herbs to brewing simples, basic remedies for stomach aches, fevers, or swelling. Then someone calls for you. The steward's voice again. You trudge back. Turns out the chapel floor needs scrubbing before noon prayers. Of course it does. You fetch the brush, a stiff, angry thing with bristles like wire, and a bucket of water so cold it might as well be from the moats. You kneel and begin, one stone at a time. Scrub, rinse, move, repeat. The floor glows under your work. You do not. Quirky historical tidbit. Many castles kept chapels sparkling clean, as any perceived neglect of a holy space was seen as bad luck. Some superstitious households even blamed illness on unclean thresholds. You finish, stretch your back until it pops, and nearly fall asleep kneeling. But you catch yourself, splash your face, and carry the bucket back to the courtyard. A pig squeals in the distance. Somewhere above, a bell chimes. Someone's arguing in the hall. You don't look. You've learned to avoid drama you didn't cause, because you'll still be blamed for it anyway. You pass the kitchen and someone tosses you a shriveled apple. A gift. A joke. Both. You eat it anyway. Your feet are soaked. Your hands sting. Your eyes blur when you blink. But you keep going. Because there's more. There's always more. Your body now moves without you telling it to. Each task flows into the next, as though your limbs know better than your brain. It's past noon. The shadows have curled up under the trestle tables. The stones are warm where the sun hits, and your back is starting to feel like it's made of badly stacked firewood. And right now, you're in the laundry yard. Again. Mainstream historical truth. Laundry in medieval castles was grueling and typically done outside, regardless of season. Clothes were soaked, boiled, scrubbed, and beaten with paddles, then wrung out by hand and hung on lines or laid on bushes to dry. You kneel beside the great copper pot, stirring the steaming, grimy stew of linen with a wooden pole. The pot is heated over a fire that spits when the wind gusts. You've got a bundle of noble underthings to rinse next. Fine, yes, but also stiff from previous washes. A washerwoman barks out directions behind you. Don't let that hem sit too long. It'll yellow. You nod and heave the linen from the boiling pot into a rinse bucket. The steam hits your face like a slap. Your hands are already pink and pruned, and now they feel like overripe pears in hot water. Quirky historical tidbit. To whiten clothing, medieval launderers used lye made from wood ash, or more disturbingly, stale urine. The ammonia helped bleach fabric, but the smell was a different matter. You'd know a wash yard by scent before sight. You reach for the paddle and begin beating the sheets rhythmically against a wide, flat stone. Whack, whack. The sound is steady, soothing even, until you catch a finger between fabric and stone. You yelp. Nobody hears. You suck your knuckle and keep going. Above, the steward passes the balcony, inspecting the courtyard. He doesn't look down. You don't expect him to. Eventually, you haul the wet laundry to the drying line. It stretches across the rear yard, pegged with loops of twine. You hoist each piece with care, not because the fabric is precious, but because if a shift tears, you'll spend the evening patching it, or worse, explaining. The breeze lifts one of the sleeves. It waves like a ghost. You wave back, just to feel less invisible. Historians still argue how frequently laundry was done in castles, especially in winter. Some say shifts were only washed monthly, while others suggest large households ran weekly operations just to keep pace with their own linen quotas. By mid-afternoon, your apron is soaked. Your arms ache. Your fingers have little blisters from wringing cloth. You pause by the well to drink. The bucket's been used so often today, The rope creaks like an old man's knees. The water is cool, sharp. It tastes like metal and moss. You savor it, even as someone calls your name from the gate. You don't answer, not right away. You allow yourself one breath, just one. Then you go. Turns out the dog made a mess in the chapel again. Of course it did. You collect the mop and a cloth. You clean the slate with reverent strokes, eyes darting toward the stained glass window, as if a saint might take pity and finish the job for you. No such luck. You finish just in time for the next wave, the delivery cart. A farmer has arrived with 2 sacks of barley and 3 dead rabbits. You help unload. The rabbits are stiff, their paws curled like they're mid-sprint. You carry them by the ears to the kitchen and hang them on a rack outside the door. The cook inspects your work. Grunts. Approval? Maybe. Quirky historical tidbit. Some castles kept small-scale farms or worked out delivery contracts with surrounding villages. These supply runs were vital, especially in winter. Servants were often expected to weigh, inventory, or store deliveries properly, or pay the price. You tally the barley, double-checking the measure against a wooden scoop. You're no good with math, but you know better than to come up short. The day is cooling now. Long shadows stretch across the courtyard again. You pass the herb garden, now dappled in gold. Bees buzz near the sage. Someone's washing vegetables in a wooden tub. A bird calls from the parapet. You almost feel peaceful. Almost. Until someone needs you to fetch the piglet that's gone missing near the outer wall. Because yes, there's always something ridiculous. The piglet chase takes longer than it should. It zigzags through the lower yard like a child with a sugar rush. Hooves clattering against cobblestone, tail wagging like it knows you can't catch it. You dart after it, slipping once in a puddle, because of course it rained last night, and finally corner the little brute near the woodpile. It snorts as you lift it, its body warm and squirming like a furry bellows. You carry it back, arms sore, knees muddy, dignity officially misplaced. Mainstream historical truth. Livestock weren't just housed in outer farms. They often lived near or even inside castle walls, especially pigs, goats, and chickens. Servants were tasked with feeding, herding, cleaning after, and occasionally wrestling them down mid-chaos. The steward mutters something about keeping the pens latched. You don't answer. You just wipe your arms on your apron and shuffle toward the water trough to rinse off. Afternoon is fading fast now. The castle is settling into its golden hour lull, when sunlight catches on armor and everything looks noble, even if it smells like livestock and sweat. You're sent to sweep the upper corridor, where rushes have been scattered since the feast. There's a clump of herbs in the corner, marjoram, or maybe just something that's trying to smell like marjoram, and you scoop it into your basket, already half full of dust and crumbs. You hum as you work. Just a little. Software sleepy. Quirky historical tidbit. Castle floors were often strewn with rushes and herbs, both for comfort and to mask smells. Some households changed them monthly. Others, not so much. The blend of sage, lavender, and trampled meat juices was not exactly fragrant. You pass a noblewoman in the corridor. She doesn't acknowledge you, but her dog growls. You give it a wide berth. No bite today, thank you. The steward catches you mid-sweep. The armory, he says. No explanation, no apology. You head down. The armory smells like oil and iron. Rows of chainmail gleam dully in the twilight. You're handed a cloth and a pot of grease and told to polish the vambraces and spalders. You don't even remember what those words mean anymore, but you know what to do. Rub. buff, stack, repeat. Your reflection stares back at you from the curved surface of a helmet. You look like someone who hasn't slept in 300 years. You smile at yourself. It feels like a joke. Historians still argue how often armor was cleaned and maintained by household staff versus the knights themselves. Likely both played a role, but one definitely had better pay. You're not done yet. You're sent to retrieve clean towels from the storeroom for the visiting baron's entourage. You count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then double back for 2 more because someone forgot to mention the squires. Back in the hall, you hear music again, flutes and soft drums. The fire crackles, laughter rises. It's warm in there. You're not welcome. You deliver the towels to the guest chambers and head outside to empty the kitchen scraps. The slop bucket is heavier than usual. Maybe someone's trying to feed the pigs and the rats tonight. You tip it into the trough, then rinse the bucket with the water pump, which groans like it too, wants to lie down and die. Then you catch a break. 5 minutes. You sit by the stable wall, watching the light sink lower. A stable boy shares a crust with you. No words, just bread. It tastes like peace, until the bell rings again. Evening fire prep. You haul kindling to the guest rooms, stack it in neat bundles, relight what's flickering. Your hands are coated in soot. You leave prints on your skirt. You wipe them away. Someone sees. No one cares. Quirky historical tidbit. Some servants were required to wear gloves when handling noble belongings, if they had gloves. Most didn't. So they used rags, or nothing, and just learned to wipe faster. Final sweep before curfew. You dust the stairwell railing with a rag so old it has holes. Your arm moves like it's floating underwater. Your eyes burn. The torches crackle low. Somewhere, a lute plays its last song of the night. You return the rag to the closet. Hang your apron. Pause. Just a minute. Just breathe. It's nearly over. One more chore. Always just one more. There's a kind of sacred stillness to castles at night. The halls, once filled with clatter and commands and clinking goblets, fall into deep, layered silence. Not the kind of silence that's empty. No, it's heavy. It carries weight. Breathes softly down the corridor. You move through it with the reverence of someone walking through a chapel, arms full of linens, footsteps muffled by worn slippers and worn-out legs. You're folding towels now. For tomorrow. Because you'll need them again, and no one wants to fold towels at sunrise. Mainstream historical truth. Late-night servant duties in castles often included quiet prep for the next day, laying out clothing, preparing water basins, straightening chambers. It wasn't about efficiency, really. It was about not being noticed when the day began again. You tiptoe into the side hall where the hand-washing bowls sit. You pour water from the jug into the copper basins, careful not to splash. The sound is small, like raindrops into a lake. You take a rag, wipe the rims until they shine. Then the steward appears again. He has one last task. You're to accompany him to the battlements. Something about checking the shutters. It's a formality, really. But nobles don't like sleeping with open shutters, even when they're 6 stories above ground. So up you go. The stone stairway spirals endlessly, each step rising like a question. Why are you still here? Why haven't you collapsed? Why do your knees sound like gravel in a jar? At the top, the wind greets you like an old friend. Cold, sharp, a slap to the face that almost wakes you up. You check the shutters. All closed. Still, you wait. You look out over the fields. The moon hangs above the village, fat and golden. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. Closer still, the castle sighs in its sleep. You don't feel important, not in the grand, glittering way, but you feel necessary. Quirky historical tidbit. Some noble households posted trusted servants to watch from towers at night, not as guards, but as listeners. They were tasked with hearing strange sounds, changes in wind, or ghostly whispers. Yes, ghosts were considered a valid threat. You descend slowly. Each step down is a test of balance, willpower, and aching calves. Back in the hallway, the steward dismisses you with a nod. You don't need words. Your shift is over. You return to the cot. Same spot. Same lump of straw. Same creaking wood. But tonight, it feels earned. You lie down. Your hands still twitch with phantom tasks. You smell of grease, smoke, soap, and goat. Your body is a map of chores, but you're warm. Your breath slows. You feel, if not proud, then content. Because no one died. Nothing caught fire. And the Lord's sheets were warm when he lay down. Historians still argue what medieval servants truly thought at the end of their days. Some suggest resentment, others quiet dignity. But most agree they worked until they fell asleep standing. And tonight, you nearly do. The cot welcomes you. The darkness holds you. And your final thought, before sleep finally takes you, isn't of the steward, or the chamber pot, or even tomorrow's rushes. It's the soft scrape of your feet on cold stone, and how somehow that became home. And now, listener, let that final candle flicker out. The castle lies quiet behind you, its great stone walls hugging the night like an old cloak. Outside, a breeze rustles the drying herbs strung beneath the eaves. Inside, all is still. No shouting, no footsteps, no more orders whispered in the dark. You can almost feel the chill of the flagstones fade from your feet, replaced by a warmth spreading slowly from your chest outward. The aches of the day begin to drift away, first from your shoulders, then your hands, then your tired legs that carried you through hallways, kitchens, courtyards, and towers. There's nothing left to carry now. Just breathe, software even, quiet. The weight of duty, lifted. The rushes have been laid, the fires tamped down. Even the dogs are dreaming. And you've done well. You've survived the day. You've outlasted the clang of armor, the sneers, the slop, the sour bread, and the squinting steward. You served, you stepped lightly, you swept. And now, you sleep. Let the hush settle around you like a woolen cloak. Let the castle crumble into dream shapes, its stones softened by moonlight, its corridors unfolding into something safe, familiar, and far away. No one will call your name tonight. No one will tug your sleeve. You're off duty now, so rest, sleep deep, and dream of quieter places where no bells ring and no piglets run, just stillness, and the sound of your breath easy in your chest. Good night.